Welcome to the Renegade Politics Podcast, where you'll understand politics from an expert perspective. On the web at renegadepoliticspodcast.com.
A couple things I want you to know. One of them is I don't do any redos, so if you hear me cough or I don't have a button to shut that off. There's nothing I can do about that. But I don't do any redos if I trip over my own words. I think it's just a more natural way to do things. I don't know who's out there doing podcasts, re-record. But since I did radio, that's what I'm going to do. Just, you're going to hear it, how it comes out of my mouth. So on that, I will say this. There is repetition in these podcasts because a political campaign is something that you can't contain in these self-contained segments like these podcasts are. There's going to be bleed through. There will be things that are covered in different ways, and it's not because of the way a podcast is done. It's because this is the way the political campaigns are. They're pretty messy. That Gopak used to say in the 90s, it was they had a book out. What was it? Flying Upside Down. Running a political campaign is like flying upside down. And I think it's pretty true. So this one is the campaign plan. The first one was the basics to know what you're getting yourself into. This is going to be a little different than that. I mean, well, it'll be all different because it's new material. But it may feel a little similar in a sense. The campaign plan is everything, right? That's what, I guess the question is, what is a campaign plan? It's the plan. It's what you need to do or know to win. Because a campaign is a war. And in a war, they call an attack a campaign. So you have to have a plan for that. So what you're doing is you're attempting to fire someone from their job with a war. Or say that you're the better choice, or however you do it. But yeah, it's firing. Well, I guess if you have two challengers, you're saying you're the better choice. So imagine walking into a business and attempting to convince the owner to fire somebody and say that you're the better for the company. And that's what you're trying to do. And I know I said that in the last episode. So how do you get people to care? How do you get people to engage? How do you get people to vote for you? Through a good campaign plan. That's the heart of everything you're doing. And part of the plan are all these things I'm going to talk to. So first is what you need to do first. Before you even get a plan. Or I guess it's part of the plan. Okay, this is all part of the plan. How's that? Signs. People always want to know about signs. There's some things about signs that drive me crazy. You have to make sure they're acceptable for a location as far as size. Sometimes they don't let you have them too big or like, I guess too small is never a problem. Different areas, different size signs, make sure you know that. Call your local zoning office or something. The name on a sign. Have your name be the biggest thing on the sign, please. Your picture, I don't think anybody cares. If it's common for people to put their picture on a sign, well, I guess put your picture on the sign, but make sure it's a professional picture and you don't look dumb. The slogan, I don't think people care about slogans. The slogan is your name. Colors, there's been a movement in the last 10 years or so to call Republicans are red, which doesn't make it much sense to me because it's confusing. I thought Republicans would be blue. Republicans are red, Democrats are blue for some reason. Remember the pinko thing that came from Nixon, calling his Democrat opponent a communist? Pinko, the sign was red, and in the rain it turned pink. I think that's true. I don't know how much that matters. I've noticed some Republicans who try to do red. I guess Democrats do blue. I don't know. George Bush's thing was blue in 2004. He won. Message. The message is... Well, it used to be 3 bullet points. That's what they teach you. The issues are not as important today, I've found. Shared values or something. If you can somehow convey that, who you are and how that fits into being important for the voter. But remember, it's about the voter. It's about what the voter is going to get from you. Not a new TV set or something like that, but depending on, I guess, what party you're running in, right? But it's about what you're going to do for the voter. They don't care about what your grades are. This is a really interesting thing. Message. Talk about message. I came off of a campaign kind of recently. I talked to somebody, and it was a job. They were a lawyer, and they're talking about lawyers, being a lawyer. And here's my thing. People don't give a crap about you and your law career. They want to know who you are. They want to know what makes you tick, what makes you make a decision, what kind of decision you are, just who you are. They want to know who you are. And you got to get that in a message somehow. We'll go into messages in another podcast, but that's what a message is. An actual campaign plan, that's a schedule, a calendar. That's something you have to do. Go to the day of the election and work backwards. You need to know how many signs you need, where they're going to go, approximately, how many you want out in the streets, how many mailings you want to do. You plan, here's another thing about, by the way, signs, but also mailings. You plan the colors according to how much money you have, because if you have no money, one color is going to be cheapest to do a one-color sign or a one-color mailing. A full color is going to be more money, so just remember that when you're doing that. And again, I just want to remind you that this podcast is about the overall campaign plan. These are the components to the plan. The next podcasts are going to be the specifics of these things. We're going to go into these a little bit more. But you need to know the basics of what a campaign plan is. Fundraising. What do you need? Find from other campaigns how much you need to win. That will dictate how many mailings you do, how many signs, because you won't be able to see from the, and you need to pull this from other people who ran for this position and the person you're running against. You can find out what they spent, but you don't know how many mailings they did. You can find they spent $17,000 on a mail house. What does that mean? I don't know. I don't know what kind of deal they got. I don't know. Did they do one color? Did they get a break? Did they get that? You can't do anything with that. So because the media covers, and I'll do another media podcast, but because the media covers how much money you raise, and that is really the lifeblood of politics, and that's really a gauge of how you're doing. Try to raise what your opponent raised, or find out what's competitive. I want to tell a story about a campaign I know of in Illinois. Illinois 2014, here's a congressional race. I pulled up the records here. The guy who raised the most money was a guy named Burt Miller. He was like a CEO guy. $532,000 for primary, Republican primary. Actually, let me do this the other way. The number one vote getter was a state rep, Darlene Sanger. She got 13,000 votes. Number two is this local guy, Chris Balcoma, 12,000 votes. Number three, with 9,000 votes, Burt Miller. Here's the fundraising. Number one vote getter, 36%. She raised, I think, about 120,000, 150,000. Although it got blended, I couldn't find that's what I think. Number two guy raised 107. No, she must have raised more than that. Probably 200,000. Forget her. Number two vote getter. 2 points less than the winner. He raised 170,000. Number three vote getter raised $532,000. That's what I'm really trying to get here. The guy spent almost 3 times the next person up the ballot. Spent $532,000 to get 9,400 votes. I don't know what that is per vote. It's not always about money, is what I'm trying to say. It's about effective money. Being effective with your money. If you raise the money and you buy 532,000 popsicles and you throw them in the street, well, that's not going to do much for you. So it is about more than just the raw number for money. How many votes do you need? You need to have that in your campaign plan. Look at past campaigns. You have to weigh differing situations, a presidential year, a non-presidential year, what kind of campaign you're running. That's important. I was involved in a campaign. The situation was this. You had the local townie people. You had the people who were not the townie people, who were there for the business that was predominant in the town. And you have to realize that the townie people are going to vote for the townie guy who grew up there, went to high school there and everything. And the people who didn't like the townies were not going to vote for. So you have to look not just at the number. Oh, I need 832 votes to win. You have to divide it up based on who the voters are. And you got to figure that out. Something I don't believe in is doing that on gender, doing that on skin color. First of all, I think it's kind of insulting. Because people who are women, we're going to vote for a person with the same body part. That to me doesn't make any sense. And if they are, then nothing you can do about that if that's the case. People are people. But weigh the factors. There will be a podcast on that as well. The campaign team is important. Here are the basics. Campaign manager. Campaign manager is it was told when my first campaign I worked on, the guy was a candidate for governor at one point, a nominee. And he was a state rep. He got elected the year I was born. I remember this. I was like 28 or something, 27. I don't know, maybe younger. He said the campaign manager is the quarterback. That's a pretty good way of putting it. Campaign manager decides how everything's done. Depending on the size of your campaign, you may have that's it. You may have more people. Communications director, that's the old press secretary, handles all the media. Goes on TV, goes on radio, talks to the newspaper. Volunteer coordinator, that is a person who makes sure that you have volunteers and that they are doing something. They're usually a volunteer. And if you get elected, usually they become part of your whatever you're doing. General consultant's a person you pay to tell you the things I'm telling you now, but more specifically to you. I think nowadays they have a social media person. Social media director, I don't know. Fundraising director, that person, they're typically paid, I want to say, this is from a gubernatorial campaign on the East Coast, 15% of whatever they bring in. Fundraising director, I'll do a whole podcast on fundraising, but basically they get 15% of the take. $1,000 check, they just made $150. That's their compensation. Here's the most important thing about the campaign team. Do not run your own campaign. Isn't that irritating? Not as irritating as running your own campaign. Me doing that. Don't run your own campaign. You will not win. And listen to the people you put in the positions you put them in. Listen to them, or else don't use them and don't put them in the position. You should have an outside advisor who just keeps check on what's going on. Usually I just use the word townie a million times. Find like a guy that's from the town you're in. Maybe you're not, maybe you are. Just have him kind of tell you how things are going on. Maybe an older guy, someone who doesn't have a big ego, someone who you don't think is going to be butting heads or wants a job from you or wants something. Just find someone who can sort of I think this is working out. Professionals are fine, but they want your money. And they get paid if you lose. I went through a congressional campaign I was helping out a long time ago, about 10 years ago. I don't know if this is legal anymore or at the time or what. But this was a scam operator, as far as I'm concerned. I won't say the name so I can say it. They basically made themselves the treasurer of the congressional campaign. They raised the money, and they kept like 90% of the money. It was crazy. I mean, this campaign raised like $300,000, and the candidate got about $12,000, and I'm not making that up. So be careful what you're signing. Be careful what you're doing, and never make a professional your treasurer, because then they have the control of what to do, how to spend the money. The treasurer is in control. That'll be covered in the fundraising podcast. Do they actually help? I don't know. This ain't rocket science. Help from other people. As a general rule, help comes when you don't need it. Other elected officials, you might get one guy who really likes you and his endorsement probably doesn't mean anything. You might get more. Maybe they do mean something. I don't know. But don't expect anything from anybody. State Republican Party, they're not supposed to run your campaign for you. I know you think they are. And I know that many fights have gone down in state Republican Party headquarters all over, and city committee and county committee. I probably just gave off where I'm from by saying city committee. They're not there to run your campaign for you. They are there to maybe provide advice, maybe plug in with people, but you got to get off the ground first. the NRCC, if you're running for Congress, for example, maybe they'll help, but they'll help when you don't need it, or when you've passed the primary onto the general. Don't count on anybody but yourself, is what I'm trying to say. If you're counting on other people, if you're counting on the Republican Party to do anything for you, please do yourself a favor and don't run for office. How's that? Strategy part of the campaign plan. The no controversy, no campaign. If there's no controversy, there's no campaign. What is controversy? Is it true? Is something true that you're saying? Is it controversial? Have people heard it? Any media is good, maybe. Where is the controversy? It could be at the door when you're knocking on the door. Did you know this guy voted for this? It could be, did you know this is going to happen? There's a fine line between educating a voter and campaigning. Don't educate the voter. Here's educating. Well, if we raise the cap 2.3%, then what'll happen is, what's the value of your house? Okay, so you're going to be paying approximately, that's educating. Campaigning is this. Hey, if this guy wins, your property taxes are going to go up. Big time. There you go. Make sure you use big time, too. Big time really scares people. Make the incumbent defend the status quo. That is how that works. That's the Achilles heel for the incumbent, because they have so many perks that we'll get into in another podcast. He or she has helped create all of the reasons people hate government. And they probably have. They probably have. How many people I know who've run on, thinking of one person who will not listen to this or put it together, that's me, run for state rep, anti-governor, gets in there. Well, I can't, it's the governor. I don't want to go against the governor. Well, yeah, but you just went against all the people who put you in the position you're in because you promised you'd go against the governor. Doesn't care, right? Well, that's probably a little more than we need to cover in the strategy, but strategy can be many things. There's really not a one-size-fits-all. If you have to make sure of something, please make sure that it is effective, what you're doing. People have to care. People have to want to give a you-know-what. Polling is a really good thing to do if you can afford it, and I talked about it in the first podcast. Go on one of these sites that does the phone polling and just do a phone poll. How do you feel about this? What are ranking? People will answer this stuff. Rank things from 1 to 5. Press 1 if you care about this. Press 2 if you don't care about it. I'll probably do a whole podcast on polling because there's a way to do it to be effective and a cheap way to do it. You don't have to spend all that much money. Probably $200 per poll, maybe $300. In a campaign plan, you need to have delivery of a message. Let me recap what I've had here because I don't want this to blend together. A campaign plan, you need the following. You need what are you going to do about signs? What are your colors going to be? If one color or more. What's the message? What's the actual plan, the calendar? The fundraising, how are you going to do it? How much do you need? The votes, how much do you need? How are you going to do it? Forget how you're going to do it. That's what how many votes do you need to win? Campaign team, who do you got there? How big is it? And, well, okay, I'm not going to say the whole, hey there, we'll do a podcast on that too. Probably all these things we'll do a podcast on. But I want you to have one resource. Professionals, do you use them? Probably not. Help, you're not going to get any help. Strategy, you got to get strategy to get the message out. The controversy, the campaign itself. The delivery of the message, that's next. I will say that even today, in our advanced technology, I think I have noticed people doing things on YouTube or on Facebook, the advertising, and I think it is pretty effective. I do. But I don't think it's something you can just do. New media is generally pointless. What I mean by new media is, I even mean the blogs, the national blogs. I was part of a congressional campaign not too long ago for a friend, very good friend, who's no longer with us. I'll tell you, he worked for Breitbart. It's such a great guy. And he was one of the original guys at Breitbart. And he won this new media. I mean, he wiped the floor. with the guy who beat him. Now, in his own county in Illinois, you're going to figure who this is out if you care. In his own county in Illinois, you'll probably know who I am. He won, and in the county that I was on the radio in, he almost won. In other counties, he lost. What I'm trying to say is you can dominate new media. You can dominate blogs. You can dominate Facebook advertising and lose. And why is that? Because you're not door knocking. You're not sending out mailings. You don't have any presence other than that. People expect to... Remember when I said they want to know who you are? If you're just a guy who just puts up an ad on the radio and that's who you are, that's not good enough. They used to teach, I remember this GoPack training, it used to teach the ideal day for a voter is they get in the car to go to work in the morning, day before the election, they're driving down the street, they turn on the radio, and there's your campaign commercial. They drive on the highway and they look up and they see a billboard, there's your face with your name on it. And then they go to work and somebody talks about how your campaign, someone knocked at their door, and they talk about you. Then they go home and they're watching TV and there's your commercial. You've got to hit people with more than just one thing. And I know I'm biased because of my age in my 40s, but I just am very skeptical on new media. It's irritating. People don't want to see advertisements when they're looking at cat videos. Mail works. People read mail. But remember with mail, and I will do a big podcast on this, you got about 4 seconds, well, maybe you have the time it takes for the voter to open, look through their mail, to look at whatever you mailed them, and you've got the time it takes them to draw, I wish you could see me do this, grab the mail, and they're on the way to the garbage can. That's the time that you have to get their attention. That's it. What's this? Okay, trash. What is it, 2 seconds? 1 second? Those 6 foot mailings are ideal for this. The 6 by 9 inch mailing, no, not the 6 by 9, 6 by 11? 6 by 11. The big postcards with big letters that say things to draw you in are the most effective. You are wasting your time, and I see so many people do this, when they put all this junk in there about who they are. I went to grad school here, and then I got a 2.0, but then I got a 4.0 at the next. Nobody cares about this. And you know what? They probably really don't care about you. They want to know who you are, but they don't want to see you bragging. I know that sounds like I'm not making sense, but think about that. Just think about it, okay? You can't put tiny text. You can put a header, served in the Marines, and then you can put under honorable discharge, was in Iraq, whatever the things you can do, that's fine. But don't expect people to read a big long thing. And nobody wants to read a long statement from you on a postcard. No one wants to read a 500-word thing about how you love the Constitution on a postcard. I promise you this. So maybe the 3 bullet points do work. I know I said the 3 bullet points are dated. Maybe 2 bullet points, maybe 5. You know what's the most effective? Is a side-by-side comparison. But that's something I'll talk about in the mailing podcast. To recap this with the campaign plan, what you need after you've determined you're going to run, which was the last podcast, this podcast is you need a plan. How are you going to make it happen? You need to know who the staff is, if there is staff. Volunteers are, if there are. Well, you better have volunteers. And you better have a way for volunteers to volunteer. You better have something for them to do. Even if it's just something for them to do. When I got involved in politics, one of the things I did was I had a political action committee, and we had a monthly meeting at a bar. I was in my 20s. We paid for, I think we paid for appetizers or something. Free appetizers, come on down. And I remember it grew from 2 people to well over 30, 40, 50 people would show up at this thing after, 6 months of this or a year of this. You've just got to keep at it. You got to keep at it, and you've got to get people involved, and you can't be a petty tyrant by yelling out, barking out commands, but you also can't be one of these people, well, if you want to do that, if you say to somebody, if you want to do it, go ahead, they're not going to do it. Volunteers is a very important thing that I will cover in another podcast. But volunteers, you better make that part of your plan. The plan is to figure out your signs, your colors, your message, your schedule, how much money you need, how many votes you need, who's going to be on the team, if you're going to use professionals, what kind of help you're going to get, the strategy to get the message out that you've already figured out, the mechanical delivery of the message, how's it going to be done, radio, YouTube, mail, and that's it. It's as simple as that. The help that I said you're probably not going to get, which you're probably not going to get, the help from elected officials, from the Republican Party, you might be surprised at some of the things they're willing to do for you. It probably is best in asking, hey, who did your mailing? Hey, who printed your signs? That's where you go for that. Because when you call and you say, hey, Senator Jones, listen, I'm running. I know you think I'm a great guy. Well, listen, who printed your signs? Oh, ABC Printing did. Then you call ABC Printing and say, hey, ABC, I'm running for office. Senator Jones told me to call you. You might get a break on your signs. You probably will, depending on who it is you're name dropping. That's how that works, and that's why that's important. A campaign plan is something you need to do. You can change it along the way, but you better stick to it. I'm not contradicting myself. It's got to be what it is, and if you change it, you amend it, that's fine, you alter it, but you've got to stick to it. When you find yourself just winging it and making things up, you're going to lose. If you say you're going to go out every weekend and door knock for 3 hours, you do that if it's on the plan. If you decide only 1 hour, you do that afterwards. You've got to execute what's on the plan. Otherwise, you're going to run out of time. You're not going to remember to do things. You're not going to do things. It's going to get away from you. It's a very complicated thing what you're thinking of doing, running for office. Much more complicated than you think. And it's complicated because you got to live, you got to eat, you got to take care of yourself. You got to bathe and sleep and probably work. And your opponent probably doesn't have to work because their work is this. Just another reason why running against an elected official is a tough thing to do. Because they got all the time in the world and name recognition. They don't have to, no one's going to know who they are. Don't confuse what I'm saying. Yeah, how many times I've been in a mall, talked to, everybody knows my opponent. Oh, really? Everybody knows Joe Jones? Okay. Excuse me, sir, eating the taco over there. Do you know Joe Jones? He's your state representative. Always happens. Nope. And I keep asking until the guy I'm with says, okay, forget it. So I don't want you to think that everybody knows your state rep, everybody knows the guy you're running against. They probably don't. Probably nobody does. But they know them as the state rep. When I knock on the door, hi, I'm State Representative Jones. Oh, wow, okay. That's instant name recognition because they know what a state representative is. That's what you're running against. When you're just a guy running for state representative, it's kind of presumed that you're a yahoo. Unfortunately, I'm sorry, unless you're in the media with good things. Other podcasts I'm going to get into media probably next. Fundraising, door knocking, the mailings, how to do them. There's a right way, there's a wrong way. I will probably have examples of things that I'll put up. I'll put it up on the website, renegadepoliticspodcast.com. You can email me at renegadepoliticspodcast@gmail.com if you have any questions or comments, or you want to complain, please feel free to do that too. Or if you have anything you want covered that isn't covered, or clarification. I don't mind communicating. I'm not here to sell you anything. I'm not here to sell advice. I just want people to understand the mechanics of how to run a campaign. And I know even though I have a sense of humor that's a little different than a lot of people, I can come off negative. I know that. I'm not trying to discourage anyone. It changed my life. This changed my life. I would be a different human being today if I was never involved in this. And I have friends that are just the most amazing friends you could imagine because of the bond that I have with them over this. Lifetime friends. So it can be rewarding. It can be truly amazing. It can be a wonderful thing. Don't be afraid of this. If you're one of those people that needs the backwards encouragement, look at the people who were elected. You can do better.